if we could be put on that. And wait a minute, it told me that recording was in progress. And I asked if we could be on that screen that shows to the whole community when we're meeting, and they said no, only library programs could be on that. So they've been, when we're there, everybody is wonderful and very open, and oh my gosh, who's sitting there with a palm tree and water behind them? That looks wonderful.
Thank
Chicago
you.
So anyway, that's kind of my story, and I'm wondering what issues, be interesting to hear what other issues people have with going to a library.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So we're actually hoping to that some of the librarians, I have like 5 different librarians who told us that they were going to join. So I'm hoping they will join so that they can answer some of our questions. One of them, Shuli Serrano, she has a program at Las Cruces Public Libraries, and she said she will join, but at 12:30 because she had some other schedule. So let me, before we continue, just so that in case that anybody who has joined after I gave the directions, if you want to save the transcripts, I'm actually recording the meeting, but at the bottom of your screen, there's 3 little dots that say more. So when you click into that, then it's going to give you the option of having captions. And so this is the way to actually save the transcript. So you click into captions and to show the captions. And at the end of the meeting, before I close up the meeting, it will give you the option of saving. So then saving the transcript so that you can save it and it will go into your computer. Okay. So Professor Peter, I'm sorry, how do you pronounce your last name?
Okay. This is a time I introduce myself so that everybody can know my name by the beach, which Lynn seems to like very much, you know.
Please.
Yes. Yes, my name is Peter Newey. Like dear, D-E-A-R, like dear, my dear Cecilia.
Yes.
New, my new friend, dear Newey. It is a Kenyan name, and it means warrior, and I love it. But right now, I am by the beach in Southwest Florida, by the Gulf of Mexico. Well, of course, that's a fake background, but I'm near the beach, though, you know. And I am in a town called Fort Myers. I am a professor at Florida Gulf Coast University. And we are just starting. Chris came a few weeks ago, let me put it that way. And we got very excited about Socrates Cafe. We are trying to move on. And I was so excited to get your email, Shishilia, last night. And it was just kind of you. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to learn more from people like Glenn and others who have done it before and how it's working and the challenges. And we are just newbies in this business. Okay. I've got a very good, exciting team, though. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes. So some people who have joined before, they asked, like, for example, if you should start with a book, like Peter, you mentioned that there were some book clubs already at the university and that it may be easier to join them rather than to start your own group. And I actually think that they're very different in nature, just because like when people read ahead of time or even choose a question ahead of time, you know, you either don't show up because you didn't read it or you're not interested in the topic and things like that. And this way, and perhaps Alex or others can tell us about their own experiences, but I I feel like when you pose the question at the beginning of the meeting, or even, I mean, if you pose it, or beforehand, it kind of gives advantage to some people that may be experts in the topic, or that will read ahead just to have their arguments ready. And then something happens, like every day things happen during your day or during your week. And so I think the freshness of having the group choosing their own questions at the moment of the event is actually a kind of nice thing, just because it's like perhaps the unfamiliar, but also every person takes the question in a different direction according to their own experiences. So I think that we tend to prefer to have people who show up, pose the questions, and then just choose. So yes, Alex. And then I'm really bad about I keep forgetting to give everybody a space to introduce themselves. So go ahead, Alex, and please introduce yourself.
I'm Alex Innes. I live in Chicago. I used to host a Socrates Cafe at my local community college in a little town called Oglesby, Illinois. That's like in the middle of the state. And that was before the pandemic, before I moved and everything. But I was going to say, with the reading materials, I would think it would be cool to recommend reading material after the discussion. Like if you have the Socrates Cafe and then whatever everyone is talking about, maybe someone thinks of something that it reminds them of, or like the facilitators themselves will have something to recommend. And then, if anybody looks at it, cool. And at the next discussion, that's something that we can talk about before our new discussion starts, like when people are still coming in, because I would always have a start time of like 6 or something like that. But we wouldn't really get the discussion, like we wouldn't really choose a question until about 6:30, because we would just kind of wait for people to trickle in, and that's just like everybody would just be talking about random things. But I think it's always cool to just continue the conversation from last week, because sometimes people still want to talk about it, but we try to have something different every week, obviously. Or
That's very good.
Whenever you have I was just telling Cecilia that I think I would have it monthly, because I might not have time. But I want to have multiple facilitators. How's it going? In case if like they did want to do a weekly thing, then potentially it would be a different facilitator each week, but like it would still continue on, and then whoever could join, maybe there would be 2 facilitators one week or 3, and then like so on and so forth,
Nice. Thank you so much.
Hey,
Do I
everybody.
see Chris? Is Chris in town?
Well, I just got back. I'm going to walk to a cafe and set up, and then I'll see you in just a minute.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. The thing is, we are trying to get the who comes in, and because the book club is already a structured group of people who have been doing some things. So we want that group, but we don't want them to see it like it's another book club discussion and what the topic. You're right. So that, because they are more structured in leading a book. But now, you're right, Alex, we want them to feel free to talk about some topic, whatever that topic is. We don't need to prepare. Yeah, it's much easier. So that's becoming a little bit of a challenge, but that's okay. We're going to move on. Yes, it's good. And the good thing is, that I don't know how often this team will be meeting. We can share ideas and learn from each other, I guess, and then try to implement some things,
Absolutely. So this is that is actually the idea of these groups, and we're trying to do them every other month. I thought every month will be fine, but then I realized it was difficult for everybody, including myself, because it takes a lot of organizing and preparation ahead of time. So but yes, that's the idea. So let's see, Jerry, and do you want to introduce yourself, and Michael?
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi. I'm just listening in. I've run Philosophers Cafe, the cafe philosophy in Victoria, Canada for 12 years, but I haven't done it for a long time now. I do related things now. I do have I've prepared actually a whole book of collected essays. Christopher has written an essay for the book on Philosophers Cafe. We lost our publisher, but we're on the search for another one. It's been a long haul. But there are a whole bunch of articles in there about from different people who've run these kinds of things throughout the world. But it doesn't exist yet, so I won't go on about that book. I just a couple things related to what people have been saying. I started when I started, I had people choose topics, but I did it like they chose topics for the next week, and then I moved to a couple weeks in advance, and that gave me a chance to make use of free media and get the word out about a given topic. And since that turned out to be kind of a lot of work, what I ended up doing in the end is over a series of sessions, I would make a long list. I would take suggestions, but I'd take a long list of one-word topics. And everybody present would vote on them, either up or down, and we'd tabulate. Sometimes we'd get 40 to 60 votes or something like that. And the top 12 or 16 topics were the ones that I would spread out over the next 4 months. And then I had a row of topics that I could promote more easily if I had 16 or something. And so people had say about what to talk about, but not immediate say. One of the disadvantages of having people decide on the spot is sometimes it takes a bunch of time to do it. And sometimes the question that comes up is not always that philosophical or helpful. I mean, I remember once we had the topic, is God a communist? I mean, I don't know what to do with that. But that was the topic that sort of won the vote that week. So that one of the reasons I started to change it. The other thing, we certainly didn't have required reading or anything like that, but I did send out a message each week with a bunch of quotations on the topic. In addition to the one-word topic, I would actually come up with 3 kind of opening questions, which were rarely actually the focus of the discussion, but they were sometimes gave people things to think about, and people did sometimes address them individually. I would send out a whole bunch of quotations on the topic, and I started writing little essays. At first, just paragraphs of questions, but gradually a little bit longer. And all of those essays actually eventually got collected into a book called How to Play Philosophy, which you actually can see back there. That's a collection of so I know people did things differently. Like Christopher in his book, he wrote after his events and sort of summarized them and talked about what happened. And that was the same thing that Mark Sauté did when he first started them in Paris. But I would write things in advance, and they would never be the focus, and many people did not read them, and that was just fine. So but it was just a primer kind of to get people thinking. I would sometimes do a provocative survey of history of philosophy or something like that, not to get my opinions out or to take a stand on things, but to just stir things up a little bit and lay out options for people. So I think it's great to come up with topics on the spot, but there are other ways that sometimes work as well. So I'll just leave it at that. And That's what I'll say. And hide in the background and listen in. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Well, what kind of questions? You talked about 3 questions. What kind of questions did you put forward first?
Well, that's a good question. I gradually moved to what are called open questions, and that ruled out a lot of basic philosophical questions, but not philosophical topics. So, for example, if you took the topic, does God exist? Then people who believed in God would stay away in droves, because it seemed like an opportunity for to show up and have people tell them that they were wrong about their beliefs. So it wasn't on that it was silly or something like that. So that wasn't very helpful discussion. But instead, if you ask, what does God mean to you? Then even the atheists have to come forward and say something about what kind of God they think doesn't exist. And very often that exposes some kinds of atheism that have a very naive view of God and refute that sort of straw man or straw God hypothesis. So yeah, open questions rather than things that accentuate side taking and controversy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the reason is that I would hope the questions don't end up creating an element of you're right and wrong, or you're this or that. It's just, we are all,
Right.
it's an opinion, it's my feeling, whether I believe God exists or you don't believe he does not exist. Nobody is really right or wrong,
Right. So that was the purpose of the open questions. And I noticed that as soon as I did that, the attendance, and I did that fairly early on, like about 4 years in or something, but that's early. Took me a long time. But as soon as I did that, the number of the proportion of men and women attending moved more into balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think also something that is very important and that we have stressed before is that, it's not a group for argument. I think one of the most important things, I think, for true Socratic inquiry to happen, in my opinion, is that first of all, it's a safe community, so that people can feel, those like perhaps quieter souls, or people who have had difficult experiences in their life. I mean, we have all, but in terms of speaking out and things like that, can feel that they're in a safe community. So I think that is part of even choosing a question, because if it's gonna be politics, it's gonna be religion, you can actually be able to take most any question and ask the participants to frame it into a philosophical way. And that is, of course, there's an art behind it. And I think, Peter, you may have heard Chris. Oh, no, you didn't. No, but Chris has this presentation that is called All the Right Questions. And it's all about the art of questioning and how we can take most any topic and or question that doesn't sound philosophical, and some people just throw it out as a statement, and rather than a question. But little by little, I think that's the role of the facilitator, to make the participants realize that this is not the type of place where we're here to polarize ourselves even more. And as it is, we are very divided into politics, religion, you name it, education, whatever, parenting, just anything. So there is a way to kind of make that statement as a facilitator that this is a safe community. We're not here to put other people down or to show up our, just, I don't know, political or religious extremes, but rather just really listening. And I think that is just listening with curiosity. And if we know anything about our nervous system, that cannot happen if we are not in a safe space. And so I think that is kind of like one of the very important elements about Socrates Cafe that distinguishes from other type of groups, So, and I'm sorry, Alex, you have raised your hand. Is there anything you wanted to add to what Michael was saying?
Something he said, I think it was just a problem that I did have. Like, there wasn't many, but it would take some time sometimes to actually decide on a question, like a bit longer than I'd hoped, and that was just like a problem. I wanted to say I agree, I had that problem as well. But also, I was a sophomore in college at the time, and some of the younger students would kind of just throw in joke questions, and like it's cool sometimes, it's good for everyone to have a laugh, but then every once in a while there would be a couple people where I would have to kind of pull them aside and be like, hey, this is a real thing, like you're kind of taking everyone's time, I actually enjoy doing this every week, and you're like, I don't want to kind of take up too much of everyone's time with just fooling around, like it's good to have it sometimes, but that wasn't like, where was I going with that? A question or something that I would want to gain from like our discussion right now would just be how to kind of keep everyone more on track, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that hopefully I would have more of a more broad audience, because I did it at my community college. Originally, we were only allowed to have people from the college when we had it at the college, until I started doing it at an outside cafe, and then we could kind of invite others. But most of the crowd was still just like in their teens and stuff, and like early 20s, which I'm 24, so like I'm still in my early 20s, but I would like to have more like older people as well, and as younger people. Like, I would like to bring my grandpa and like bring my nephew or something, who's 5, because sometimes he'll say things and I'm like, wow, like how do you think this way already, like and I just think that would be cool to have a discussion with people represented from like every age or like gender and ethnicity and all that, kind of derailing what I first initially was saying. But yeah, for anyone else who has done this, I just wanted to know how you keep people on track, I guess, is what Michael reminded me of. Yeah, so.
Wonderful. Yeah, we'll get to that. Yes, and Lynn, I think you wanted to respond to Alex.
Yes, I have the opposite problem. I'm a senior, and when we started, we were really a lot of seniors. That's how the word got out. I had posters in the community. The cafe or the coffee shop where we met had a really nice kind of Gilmore Girls chalkboard outside. And the day of our meeting, she would write on there Socrates Cafe tonight, and the time. And but we have had some younger people. In my opinion, younger people were like in their 40s. We actually have 2 people right now, a woman and a man. They're not married. One's a nurse, and I think the other woman is very interesting, has had a very eclectic kind of background. But I too would like, when my husband and I first participated, we were spending some time in Florida, Clearwater Beach, and we went to 2 Socrates cafes there, and they had a variety of ages. And I think it just is a more interesting conversation because you're getting different perspectives, of course, based on age. Also, our community is very Caucasian. And I mean, it's not that we don't have diversity, but to try to, again, get some diversity in our group. For a while, we had a woman who was from South Korea, and that was wonderful, but she had some personal issues where she needed to drop out. Anyway, I commiserate with Alex's, but it's on the opposite end. Too many seniors. But and staying on topic, I think that's always, I'm not sure about other groups, but I think that's always an issue. And it does take my husband's better at getting people back on track. He's very kind. He can easily get people back on track, but that I just think it's because you're talking about something and then it reminds you of something else, and then you're off and running on that other topic, and then someone jumps in and says yes, and so reining in the group, and also we also spend too much time deciding on a question. And I think Roger, is it Roger Breisch? I think his name is from Geneva, Illinois.
Yes.
We participate. I'm actually on his email list. When we participate, that's when we decided we could do this. We participated in his group, and we kind of looked at each other and said, we can do this. And but he, in his emails, he always has a question like prepared. So he'll say, this is what I'm thinking about. This is what is happening. He'll have a question, but he then has people think about maybe a different way to phrase that question, or another question is always welcome. But I think it's always a good idea to have a question prepared so that it doesn't just keep going on and on and on. A lot of time spent.
Yeah, and Cecilia, thank you, Lynn. Cecilia, you mentioned something which we've been struggling with. We are still newbies. How do you keep that listening with curiosity going without necessarily having a topic that people are interested in? Because let's say like the topic came up, does God exist? And maybe I have no interest with that kind of question. So I'm just going to let you guys talk, and it's not, but I need more participation. You need to feel and you don't want to feel like there are few people just imposing their ideas on others. You want an open, safe ground conversation, but you want some level of listening with curiosity and maintaining that interest, and that becomes a bit difficult. And when I'm trying to get some people also getting going, the main issue has been, oh no, I'm not into philosophy. That's not me. And I'm saying, no, it's not philosophy. Everybody you're welcome. You're in safe grounds. You can say, that's what so I don't know, Cecilia, if you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yes.
How to keep it going, listening with curiosity, yes.
Yes, of course. And I also want to touch upon the keeping people on track. So I think a way that that is very easy is just from time to time, like when you notice, and I think that's one very important aspect of being a facilitator, is just like keeping your toes on the ground. Right? Because we also get emotional. I mean, I do, and you have your opinions, and you want to also just like, whatever. And, as a facilitator, you have to keep your toes on the ground. And I think part of that is, okay, so let's go back to the original question. And that's something that I've learned from Chris, just like from time to time, it's like, okay, so I think we went way out of the subject. So let's come back to the question. So that's one thing that it's always good to do, and you can do it 20 times during the during the conversation, but also like, okay, so let's look about, and that's why we have the facilitators guide. Let's look at the concepts embedded on the question. So it's not just to talk because we want to talk, because otherwise, you know, we just sit and talk over dinner, right? But we have to remember that there is a method, like behind all of this. And if you don't have the facilitators guide, just send me a note and I'll send it to you. When you sign up for our newsletter, you automatically get it. But if you haven't, just let me know. Just put your email on the chat or your name, since I have your emails, and I'll send it to you. But there is, you know, you have to go back at looking at what do we mean by belief, for example, right? There's different types of beliefs, or there's, you know, there's degrees as well, right? Not only types, but degrees of believing on certain things, right? Like I believe in Christmas, and that doesn't mean that I'm a Christian, perhaps, or that or that I believe in Santa, but the magic of it, you know, it's like just an example, just to talk about what we mean. And also, I'm trying to touch upon what Peter was asking, how to listen with curiosities. And that's also the role of the facilitator. And Chris is really good at this. It's, what do you mean by that? You know, it's like when somebody just tells you, blah, 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 you know, their big argument or whatever, or, you know, oh no, just like, you know, just whatever phrase that might be provocative or something, or not. But it's like, can you explain yourself? Can you give me perhaps an example of what you're talking about, a real life example, either from your experience or just somebody else's or something? That also brings the dialogue down to not just what Peter was saying, this philosophy that people are maybe afraid of, but rather something that is applicable into our lives and relevant. And otherwise, what is the point of getting together? I mean, there's this great thing about building community again and connecting with others, but that really listening with all your being, right, to what others have to say. And again, Peter, I think for that, we first need to build a safe space. Mm-hmm. I mean, curiosity also comes from when we are relaxed, right? When we're at rest, we can, where we're not, you know, just like on fight or flight, right? But really trying to, and that's where curiosity comes from. When I really want to know where you're coming from, I don't care if you're from the left, from the right, from the center, from the nothing, but I want to know, where does your philosophy come from? What brought you to think the things you think, you know? And it's just like that kind of connection and building bridges that Chris is always talks about, right? That is connecting, I think, more from the head to our humanity, you know, rather than keep on building walls between one and another. It's like, you know, just like I'm always curious, like my girls, you know, here, it's like, this is their household that they are being part of and being raised. And then that's not the whole world. Every single family is different, right? And every upbringing is different and experiences are different, and that is the richness that we're trying to get to when we are at a Socrates Cafe, right? It's like where those are, our perspectives come from. And that's the beauty of the facilitator, just like to being able to get to that.
Yes, but Yeshiria, there might be some danger sometimes. See, we are meant to be open, and when Chris was here, he touched on something very important, that in the America we are living in today, the state of say for discourse is not very healthy. People are not willing to listen to each other very easily. Mm-hmm. And you start getting that may start from top, but coming to small groups like we have. And I don't know at what point, even if you are a very good facilitator, you can allow some things that are unpalatable. I mean, even if it's open ground, it may be safe ground. Let me just give an example. If somebody is saying, let's say, let me use some obnoxious examples like, Black people are less intellectual than white people, or something like that, or maybe women are less than men, or some things that you don't feel that should be part of a healthy philosophical conversation. And you hear statements like that, and I hate, or I don't, like that. I don't know. You have to be very careful that there's still some limits. There's still some limits on what people can really say, I think, unless I hear otherwise. There's some things that can be very offensive. Absolutely. Stated in an environment. You cannot allow it, because we are living in that kind of time when people are not tolerant. Chris brought it up when we had Cornel West and Robert, and it was an eye-opener when you think about the state of civil discourse in this country. It's declining so rapidly, even in the democratic environment, yes.
Absolutely.
Please, I don't know. Yeah, Chris wants to say something else.
Hey, everybody. So I had a workshop with educators throughout the state of California. Almost all of them were Black. And I asked them, I said, well, what do you do when someone with racist views speaks out about those views? And one of the participants, a Black woman, said, I asked them why. Why do you think that? Did it change the racist immediately? No. But the racist is used to being provoked. He's used to having suddenly things swirl around him. So just finding out why his views are as they are, just to learn the story behind them, because there's a philosophy, believe it or not, that's embedded and entwined with his upbringing, probably, and the people he associates with. It's very difficult to do. Everybody has their threshold for having certain of their buttons pushed. Everybody. But the role of the facilitator is such that you have to set an example for everybody else. One person's provocative perspective is another person's everyday perspective. So you have to be careful. If a facilitator suddenly turns it into a one-on-one ping pong or tennis match and doesn't include everybody else, if a facilitator does not understand, this is not about argumentation and debate. That's not what Socrates Cafe is about. It's about exploration and inquiry. There's a billion other groups to argue and to debate. You don't need more. We're not about that. So if that's what you need, then Socrates Cafe is for you. I've met facilitators who love to be the center of argument. It's not what Socrates Cafe is about. If somebody espouses a view, if you say, well, it's all white people here, so it's not diverse. How do you know that? I mean, what are we talking about when we talk about diversity? There's umpteen types of diversity. You might learn something new from somebody you've known for 25 years if you are doing this correctly, and suddenly say, I didn't know you thought that. And they might say, I actually didn't know I thought this either until this inquiry took place. And that's what the midwifing, birthing part of this is. But once it strays into the territory of argument, volleying, debate, it's may still be fun for a lot of people, but it's not a Socrates Cafe as I had envisioned it to be. I'm not in any way questioning its worth or value. You know, I personally don't like to have questions set up in advance. I like the surprise of arriving and not knowing and allowing participants to choose based on certain criteria. But some people like to know ahead of time, and that's perfectly fine with me. What is not so fine with me is when it suddenly becomes about argumentation and debate instead of exploration and inquiry. And you can just tell by people's defensive postures, how people are left out, or people are suddenly getting anxious and upset and looking at other participants as the other instead of just a fellow participant. That it tends to stray into territory that's un-Socrates Cafe life. It's a practice, and I have to stop myself sometimes because somebody says something and they push a button. One of the things I like about public libraries, and I thought this is what the theme of this particular one is all about, is that it tends to bring a certain kind of diversity, even if everyone's of the same skin color. There's people quite often don't feel comfortable coming to a Socrates Cafe at a Starbucks, for instance, even if they're perfectly welcome. But they'll come to a library because it's more of a welcoming space for socioeconomically diverse people, even if they're not that ethnically diverse. Sometimes they are. You just never know. But I think one of the reasons that there's a preponderance and plurality of Socrates Cafes at public libraries, many of which have been going on for 10, 15, 20 years now, is because there's a sense of openness, of welcoming, but also that when it's done right on all pistons, it's the argumentative element, the debate element, the persuasion element, except for focusing on persuading yourself that your views are what you thought they were. I call that self-persuasion. It's not predominant in that it's a practice. Sometimes you do really well at it, and sometimes you fall on your face. I do. You have to remind yourself at the beginning of every session what this is all about. Sometimes it's good to give a preamble to yourself and everybody else what it's all about. To tell a little bit, as Cecilia said in our facilitators guide, what is the ethos of this? What is the method behind this? Otherwise, it's many things, but it's not really a Socrates Cafe. I'm not the Socrates Cafe police. I'm not going to say, oh, don't do it because you're not doing it the way I want you to. But it's not what's meant. And we sort of need to have faith in one another that we can sort of reach a higher ground together. And by higher ground, I simply mean giving each other the benefit of the doubt. At the very least, if they say something that pushes a button, ask them to explain it more, tell their story behind the philosophy. It doesn't have to be some sort of naked confessional. They don't have to tell anything about their personal lives. But if they want to, they can, but they never have to. They just have to support their view in some way, something they read, heard, or saw in that way. But you all win by simply spending an hour or two together and exploring things in a way you wouldn't in any other kind of conversation or content. And that's a practice. I mean, Dewey and Spinoza and Socrates taught us that while humans are creatures of habits, we can break those habits if we want to. You know, if we see that we're in really polarizing times, then why don't we set an example of thoughtfulness? To me, and it's a really huge goal, people don't understand that. For me, the goal of Socrates Cafe is to become more thoughtful. That's it. Become more thoughtful. That to me is an enormous goal in this time when we look at our fellow democratic citizens as adversaries if they don't agree with us. They may not agree with us, but they're still fellow democratic citizens. But just to hear views and to try to get people, including me, to tease out those views more than you would. in a typical conversation, and not to try to win the day with any specific point of view, but you all win by just hearing, not even just hearing each other out, but in a way that people are forced and intimidated to further develop their views than they normally would. Not to threaten them, but that's what it's about. Let's find out the story behind some of this. And again, it's not a one-time show. That's the reason you get together once a week or once a month or whatever, is to keep cultivating these habits. You'll have good sessions, not so good ones, you know. How much sleep you got might make a difference. Or how you facilitate. I know when I facilitate and I'm grumpy from being sleep deprived, I'm a different Chris, you know, than when I'm fresh and can really listen to people with more energy and stuff. What's it? It's just to give each other the benefit of the doubt and to, you know, I was so moved by the woman who just said, you know, when I hear somebody say something racist towards me, a Black person, I just say, well, why? Why do you think that? I don't do it out of cowardice or anything like that. It's just, I want to know what this person's story is. And to me, Socrates Cafe is all about story, having a chance to develop further and share our individual stories. Make sure that this discussion is well distributed so that the facilitator doesn't dominate. The facilitator really is trying, and the facilitator more than anything else is a real model and example of listening with all your being. Really carefully listen, because you miss things otherwise. Because they said something, they pushed a button, and you've turned off your ears. It's a never-ending pursuit. But I think one of the reasons I still enjoy it after all these years is because I miss them. You know? Like, and then I'll go back sometimes and realize, oh shit. But more than ever in these polarizing times, era of arguably demagogues and people who are willfully constructing walls between one human and another, I think it's incumbent upon everybody who moderates and participates in a Socrates Cafe to intentionally try to build bridges of understanding and empathy. Never once or for all. It's a never-ending process, and you fall on your face sometimes. But that's the goal.
Thank you, Chris. So, Odin has his has his hand up.
What did you call him? Oh, he's my he's my brother.
No, it's my Spanish.
Everybody pronounces it differently. That's all good.
You see, my wife just pushed my button.
I just yeah, I've got to actually jump off in just a couple of minutes here, but I've been loving this talk, and I think Chris and I actually talked about this several years ago. There's the physicist David Bohm wrote a book called On Dialogue that directly illustrates this as well. That the point of a dialogue is to go into all the pressures that are behind our assumptions. So it's a process of thought that isn't focused on the assumptions themselves. That can be really difficult, I found, in holding spaces where people have very opposing views or views that are inflammatory or potentially damaging to other members in the group. So that can be where things get a little hard, I think, as a facilitator. You know, how are you holding a space where someone voicing their views isn't causing harm to other people in the group? One of the ways that I found to work with that is just to set up clear expectations early on with the kind of core people that you're going to have showing up, so that more people as early as possible are aware and on board with this method of dialogue and this method of trying to see what's going on underneath the surface versus immediately being triggered by what's happening. And that means that they have to be able to do a lot of self-work and holding, because, you know, there might be people who come in and are I had a group where there was one of our members was Jewish, and someone came in and was espousing, you know, active conspiracy theories about all evil Jews in the world. And, you know, my regular member had to sit there and listen to this for a couple of minutes. And then he responded, though. And he was able to respond from a really good place. Did we have a change in the, you know, the person who showed up who was problematic? No. that person just never came back. But it was a really interesting and important shift for the people who were in the room. And it gave our Jewish member a chance to, in the next session, talk about things that he hadn't been able to talk about before and deal with his own conversation, his own internal state in a way that he hadn't been able to before. Not directly in the moment, in that intense period of time while he was being faced with this other member, but later when he was back with this group that had been intentionally training in this method of dialogue. So it's complex, and you're going to have to deal with things on a case-by-case basis. But I really love that point that Chris is getting to, I think, which is the same thing that I mentioned from Boehm's book, which is, you're going for the subcurrents. You're going for what is happening underneath versus what is just happening, on the surface. And I think that this is something that I really love, because I hate debate. I hate it. I do not like debate. I've taken all the classes on classical debate and logic, and they annoy them out of me. I think that's because the way that Boehm described it was, the root of discussion has the same root word as percussion and concussion. It literally means to break things up, to bash, to badger, to destroy. And that's not what I love about Socrates Cafe. That's the antithesis of what Socrates Cafe can do in a group situation, which is back to that dialogue, that it's an inherent act of creativity. It's similar to what happens when you're acting on the stage. There is a group metamorphosis that can take place if you are all aligned with a creative act versus a deconstructive, destructive act. So anyway, I really liked what everybody was saying there, and Chris's point made me go, I should bring this up again.
Odin, can you please share with everybody on the chat your website so people can talk to you and communicate with you? Because
happy to.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Boehm book, but I want to keep stressing that Socrates Cafe is about inquiry and exploration, and there's a method to that. And part of it is challenging assumptions, most emphatically our own, looking at what speaks for and against a variety of points of view, and sympathetically immersing ourselves in viewpoints that in any other situation we likely would not. I can't stress that too much, because it's one of the reasons that some of the groups operate for a long time, and that they have very fast friendships, some very good friendships among very different people who look at the world very, very differently, form over time. It's not to say at all that anything goes. There are limits. There are those who come deliberately to provoke and to push buttons. That's probably not for them. And they will make the group go by the wayside. There have been derailers, people who deliberately come to derail them. You got to be on the lookout for them. You got to read them the riot actors, or the soft-spoken people that couldn't come. I've seen it happen way too many times. Just one person can completely derail a long-standing group. It's happened. It's horrible. So the group has to stand up to people like that. There's balances, and they can shift. But the prize is on challenging our most cherished assumptions sometimes in a way that makes us both unsettled and exhilarated, like we've drunk too many cups of coffee or something.
I just have a quick question. I'm sorry, I can't find the raise your hand thing. I don't use Zoom very much.
Yeah.
Odin, what was the name of that book and the author?
Sure. It's the physicist David Bohm, and it's his
Really
it's a really good book, and it's on
Is it
dialogue.
Bohm, B-O-A-M?
B-O-H-M.
B-O-H-M.
I'll throw it in chat too.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I was interested in what you said about dialogue, bringing things out. I work with dialogue as a way of working out my philosophies and stuff like that, and I really got a lot out of what you just said, and I am going to let other people talk. Thanks.
Peter has his hand. I'm sorry, Peter, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Please, and members of the group, what is the best answer to this question? Towards what goal? To when somebody, I say we're going to hold Socrates Cafe, And then the question came up, so what do you want to achieve at the very end? So what's the best answer to that, Chris, and anybody else? What's the ultimate goal of Socrates Cafes?
Be more thoughtful, you know, to explore in ways that you wouldn't in a typical conversation or a debate. I mean, every college campus has courses on rhetoric and persuasion and debate. None of them have courses on inquiry and exploration. Yeah, there's a method to it, and it needs to be ingrained as part of the college experience, I would argue. And I don't know of any college that offers a full-fledged course in the art and science of listening.
Thank you.
So I want to leave feeling like I have become a better listener, that I've been exposed to perspectives that I will keep thinking about after the dialogue is ended. That there's differences between dialogue and inquiry. There's families and genuses and species. Have I inquired well? Have I made sure everybody wants to, has a chance to talk without forcing anyone to do so? They just want to participate by listening.
And
Does it?
and
Sometimes people spontaneously clap at the end. That's a really cool sign, even when it's really intensive. So
and my other question that came up when I was getting some people to join us is, do we need to register a group? I know I'll get the facilitator's manual from Shishiria. Please send that to me as soon as possible. But do we need a registration? Do we need a name like Fort Myers Socrates Cafe, so that when we are telling the people we exist, do we need that kind of registration? What does it take? What do we have a formal group? What do we? I know it must be there in the manual, but don't know. Could you talk about that, the process?
we need to transfer $6 million in gold bullion to our Swiss bank account, first of all.
All right, to you or to Shishiria? We have to be very careful.
I really can't divulge that on a recorded session.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I'm sorry. No, you just start one, follow whatever you want.
Anyhow, okay. Now answer my.
Yeah, so
And then you send the gold bullion.
All right, please. Thank you.
yeah, so actually we do have a directory, so that when people contact us from your area, for example, somebody just contacted us from your area asking if there's a Socrates Cafe, then we send them your way. But all we ask is that you kind of stick to what the Socrates Cafe method is all about. Otherwise,
Method and ethos of listening.
An ethos, yes.
That's
Otherwise, call it something else.
I mean, until about 2 years ago, we had the directory totally public. And what happened is people were getting spammed relentlessly. So we just had to stop. It's just the way the world is now. When I did things like this, that what we're doing now, I would go to Twitter and just put all the access information. People started bombarding it with pornography. They come in massive groups. So I had to stop. It's a shame, because my whole thing is about just being open to everybody with few gatekeepers of any kind. It's just a sign of the times and where the world's in.
But there's access to that directory if I go somewhere in another city.
Yeah. So if they write to us and say, is there a group anywhere in Southwest Florida, we will send them your info right away. Contact.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So actually there are a couple of people here that just came in. Sue, do you want to introduce yourself? I think Sue, are you a librarian, or do you just have a Socrates Cafe at a public library? Oh, I don't think she heard me. And Jerry, I don't know if Jerry, you wanna introduce yourself, even if it's late in the meeting, but also Sue, who just joined us, but I'm not sure if
Yeah, I'm here. I was on mute because I have a lot of background noise. But I'm in Montana, and we've had a Socrates Cafe group for about 16 years. And we've got about 6 or 7 regular people that come, and we've had as many as 15 or 20 and as few as 2 people show up. And we always have great conversations because we have an excellent moderator, Tom Claduis, who's maybe not here, but he's so smart and such a good, he's so diplomatic, and he's just so skilled at moderating that we have an excellent Socrates Cafe group.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And so it is possible, right? It is possible after so many years.
So Sheila, you're gonna send me a manual?
Yes, I will. I promise I have your email, so I will send it to you by email, okay?
Please.
I promise. Yes. And then Jeremy, yes, I'm sorry.
And I don't know when you and Chris are coming down to Fort Myers again.
I'm hoping to move there.
So Peter, actually, I'm working on my contacts at FGCU just as an excuse to come back. Because they have funding, you know. It's
Yes.
so I'll send you an email, okay?
Let's send me an email because we are working a little bit outside the.
Yes, I know
The
that.
university, you know, you understand
Yes.
that, you know.
We'll plot something out together.
Yes, we will.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, yes, and Chris just said something very important, which is I'm gonna put here on the chat 3 different links. The first link is for tipping, right? Because it actually, yeah, we don't have a regular salary. We're a nonprofit group, and we just do this out of really our love. So I'm putting that on the on the chat. Also, I'm gonna put another link for the drive. We have a drive where you can actually upload whatever photos you have, or social media you use, or whatever, to give publicity about Socrates Cafe. And so feel free to download any images that there are there. There's not that many yet. And also the third link is about the directory. So in case that you have a Socrates Cafe that we don't know of, that we are not sure that existed, if you just click into that link, it will take you to a survey where you can fill in the directory, so that when people contact us about a group in your area, we can send them your way and give them the accurate information.
And I think I had completed this form. I think I did, Cecilia, right?
Yes, I think so.
I'll do it again.
Yes, you actually, I do have you as a contact person for our directory. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I probably may need a letter from you which I can spread. I don't know how to do it. Just let people know we have this, and they can contact me, and I can send it to a number of people. Is there a letter like that you can give that I am like a facilitator or something, whatever that kind of thing, that they can reach out to me and I can. Is there a letter you can give me to that effect?
Yes, because it's so there's actually how many groups work is they have an organizer, or many organizers, and a facilitator, or many facilitators. And I think that's the easiest way to do it, so that it's going. Because it's so the burden isn't one person, it's just not fun.
If you got a letter like that to say, okay, Peter, you know, is organizing or something. I know it's not appointment or anything. I'm hating using that word, but I'll be doing that kind of stuff. Then I can share that with you, and they will probably believe me more than just I'm coming up with some strange stuff, you know.
Yes.
I never said that.
Yeah, so you just send us how you want people to contact you. And then that way.
No, I meant a letter to say like we have a formal Socrates Cafe in Fort Myers.
Oh,
So
I
I
see.
can from you, and they can contact
Oh,
me
I
and I
see.
can give it to them. You know, I can share it
Yes.
with them and tell
Yeah.
them the address where we are meeting and all that, you know.
Yeah. Well, we don't have it that formal, really.
No, I'm just saying, I don't know. I
But
don't
it
know
would.
what I'm doing.
Yes. Yes, but sure.
Rudy,
I mean, we'll give you our
yeah,
blessings. I'm kidding.
you'll give you something?
Our blessings. I said, we'll give you our blessings. But yes, I will ask Chris to get in touch with you about that as well.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Yes.
I didn't hear Mr. Rudy here. How are you,
Yes.
Rudy?
Hi, Rudy.
mute.
How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for asking. Sorry I joined a little bit late, but it's good conversation. You know, sometimes when people say, well, talk about what, they'll ask me what it was the consensus at the last Socrates Cafe, as though that was a goal to reach a consensus or something. And I said, well, there was, you know, wasn't really a consensus, but there was a lot of good thinking going on. A lot of people asking some really good questions about the topic question. And I said, you know, it's not really a goal to get people to agree about everything or anything, but to exchange their thoughts, share their thoughts and their questions. And I do like to, someone mentioned clapping, that I think Christopher did, that sometimes they end with clapping. And, you know, usually I'm the facilitator and I'll initiate it. If it doesn't start spontaneously, I'll say, thanks for coming out, everybody. And then I'll start clapping, and then everybody else does. And it seems to, you know, sort of punctuate the meeting on a positive note. Because you know, they had a good time. That's really a goal for me, is that everybody has a good time, or you know, found it enjoyable, I should say, or had some fun. So that's pretty good. And then, you know, Peter, I think you said something about what do I do, or how should the facilitator react if someone brings up an issue or says something like racist or something like that, and or a controversial subject of some sort. And so I spend a lot of time, not a lot of time. I used to spend a lot of time, less time now. And what I do is I try to invent or come up with or create open-ended questions that broaden the scope of their perspective, if I can. So I might say, well, what would the world be like if everyone was the same race? How would the world be different? Or you know, just something like that. Just there's a million questions, and usually they occur to me the day after they were relevant to the cafe. But
that happens to me all the time.
Right, but topics do tend to recycle a little bit, you know, show up more than once, I should say. And so I'm better prepared. But I do spend time the next day. I'll look at the topic question and I'll try to come up with open-ended questions, just as an exercise for me. And then when I'm facilitating, I do keep a paper and pen, so that if a good one comes up, I can write it down and then interject that to the group when I have an opportunity. So that's all I got.
Thank you so much. It actually, now that we are a small group, I have a class which I've been teaching for a while called Informal Learning Environments, and you know, it's not, there is a structure, but it's not formal, you know. And I found, and I was thinking the other day, that maybe if I formatted it into a Socrates kind of cafe for some of our discussions, you know, it's more open, it's not, I don't know. And I wanted to probably ask Chris, now you're getting, how can even infuse some of the things, ideas of Socrates Cafe in that kind of class? It requires some little bit of not formality, but some level of structure, because you don't want to be too informal, but still you don't want to, there's no textbook, is to make it too, well, there's some readings on what is informal learning and all that, but there's no real textbook. So I think I can infuse some of the ideas, and Cecilia, let me know, it's called informal learning environment, just talk, and students love it. Because you can pick on anything, and we just go, we may start here, we go different ways, and we end, and we don't get to a, and Ludi, I like this idea that we don't get to a consensus, and that's still okay. That's what reminded me of that. That's okay. We don't have to agree on anything. We don't have to. We just create a room, and we all walk out feeling good.
Yes,
And
but I think it will be important, perhaps, or that can actually help the class structure a little bit with the method. So I will definitely